All right, good morning. I'm Aaron Heiser of Maker's Leather Supply, and today we're going to build the crossbody sling. Okay, now, we already have a bag that we made a couple of years ago now that we call the sling bag. It's a larger bag, good for travel, stuff like that. Can be worn on the front or the back, whatever. But anyway, this is the full size one, and we also did a smaller, we call it the 75%, which has actually been very, very popular, especially with more petite sized people. I am not a petite sized person, and I have stuff. So this was what we called the sling bag. So it was really hard when we came up with this new little gadget to think about what to call it. Traditionally, this would have been a fanny pack, but no one wears it around their fanny anymore. Nowadays, everybody wears it across their body, okay? So once again, we come up with a new pattern that kind of matches what people are doing out there. You know, we like to try to stay relevant. I know that's not exactly my strong point, considering I dress like a lumberjack every day. But anyway, and once again, we also came up with two different sizes, okay? Originally, we came up with the big one, all right? Now, this is my fancy big one that matches my, my old Cadillac. But this was the first size that I came up with, and several people mentioned when I put it on Facebook and stuff that, man, I'd be a little bit cooler in a small version too. So here's the size difference right here. Okay, so if these corners are matched up down here, then there's your size difference. It's a good 2 inches more narrow and another 1.5 inches or so shorter, if not more than that. So anyway, we're just calling them the large and the small, but guess what? I did the same kind of formula with it, and this one is 75% of this one. So, but again, we're just calling it large and small. We're keeping it simple. Okay? Now, all that being said, they build almost exactly the same. Okay? The only real difference between the two, besides, of course, one is large and one is small, is how the front zipper is done. On the front zipper of this one, I did a hidden zipper by overlapping this entire piece, and it's sewn in all the way over at the sides. But on this one, it is notched out, and it's like a flap that is not sewn into the sides. I just found it an easier way to make each of them, particularly because generally I would make this one out of a little bit thicker leather than I would the other one. The smaller one, I would make it out of like a 2 to 3 ounce, like almost an upholstery type leather, a thinner bag leather. And the best news of that is if you make it out of that, you don't need to worry about skiving. Okay, those thinner leathers are very, very easy to manipulate and very easy to make your seams and then have a turn bag that still has good looking seams. This was the project box this month. In the project box, you were offered the opportunity to buy one or the other, or a combination of the two at a discount. You know, separate from buying each of them separately, the discount would have been, I guess you could say. Anyway, words are hard. So today, though, I have cut out one of these small ones to make. Okay. This is also the one that I did my honeycomb pattern sewing on. This was quite the challenge. It was a lot of fun. If you have a sewing machine, it's honestly, you will get so comfortable with your machine just sewing out one project that has the honeycomb pattern on it. And after that, you're going to be like, you know what, this machine ain't that bad. So I highly encourage that you try something like that, and I think you'll get real comfortable on your machine really quick. Okay. So to make either of these, we'll kind of go through the materials you would need. Again, for the smaller one, I would use like a 2 to 3 ounce upholstery or lightweight bag leather. If you do that, again, you don't need to skive it, and that's a beautiful thing because not everybody has a big old skiving machine, and not everybody's comfortable hand skiving. Okay, I'm okay at hand skiving, but I sure do love my skiving machine. But I realize, again, not everybody's got one of those, and it's okay. The larger one could also be made out of such light materials, but those materials are usually not found in most craftsmen's workshops because it is a lot of people don't use leather that thin unless they are upholsterers and things like that. So the leather that we sent out for the larger one was a little bit heavier. It was 4 or 5 ounce or something like that, and they were all skived. Yeah, but again, you could easily make the larger one out of the thinner material as well and not have to worry about skiving. This is a very simple project. I know it comes out, it's got great results, and it's going to look nice when you do it, but it's really a very straightforward build. And even if you're hand sewing, there's not a crazy amount of work that you have to put into these two projects, okay? Now, I did do piping on these, and I did do lining on these, and we're going to do both of those in this video. If you're not comfortable with either of those, I highly advise that you try them anyway, because how do we beat our comfort level or expand our horizons in our comfort level if we're not trying new things? But if you just don't want to do it, it's okay. You don't have to do the piping, but the lining on this one is super simple, okay? So I still think you should do the lining, okay? And in each of these, I also sewed little pockets, and we'll do that too. And it just helps with, you know, the usability of it, you know, to have little pockets and such, things like that, okay? So, yeah. Without further ado, we're going to talk about the template sets and what needs to be cut out if you get the templates, and then if you do skive them, what needs to be skived, okay? So we're going to bring the camera down to the desk here, and we'll talk about that. Okay, so here is the large template set. It's still taped up. This is exactly how it was sent out in the project box. I didn't open this one because it's not the one that I cut out for today's project. But again, you can actually see it right here. Here's that piece I was talking about. That's the only difference. And you see that notch right there? That's it. That's the difference in these two bags. That notch, of course, is also on the other end of that same piece. Other than that, everything is identical, just two different sizes. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and put the large one to the side, and when I get to apply the zipper and build that part, I'll talk about that slight difference. But for now, we're going to just concentrate on the one we're making, which is the small one. Okay? All right, so we need to cut out of all these template pieces, we cut out one of this piece. Okay, this ends up being the back of the bag, and it's the only piece that's like the full-size body of the bag. Okay? Then we need to cut out one of this piece right here. And what this is, it is the top. I'll point them out on the bag as I do this. This is the top above the front zipper here. Okay, right there. This piece right here is, I'm sorry, I was also supposed to talk about skiving these pieces. If you made them of a thicker leather like I did this one, this is a little bit thicker leather, so I skived it so that I could show everybody where they would want to skive. On this one, I skived all the way around it. Okay, and then on this one, I skived all the way around it, but the skive on the zipper side, the flat side, the bottom side here, is a little bit wider because, again, it's going to go up and have enough room that it can hide that zipper. Okay, now this piece is the front part right here, the main body of the front beneath the zipper, and I did just my normal skive all the way around it. It's about a 1/2 inch wide. This piece we cut one of. It is the bottom gusset. So it's this piece right here at the bottom of the bag. And I skived all the way around it. Once again, about a 1/2 inch. The next one is the top of the gusset that goes by the zipper. Okay, there are two of them. And that's them right there. Okay, and I skived down both the long sides of it. I didn't worry about skiving the ends. Okay. Now, I did cut piping for this one. The piping is not part of the template, but I will give you the length on the piping where it's just about right and you won't have a lot of waste. 18 inches plus 8.5 inches. So this is 26.5 inches long. Okay, and that will go all the way around the bag with a tiny bit to spare, you know, so that you don't accidentally cut it a little short. Okay. So I took two of these and made them of a contrasting color of leather just for the fun of it. And they're very thin now. They're like 1.5 ounces, 2 ounces or so. And where is the other one? There it is. I was like, I lost one. So anyway, there's the other one for the front of the bag, one for the back of the bag. The only other piece we have to talk about as far as the body of the bag goes is these 4 pieces right here. Okay, you get this one little template. And what it is these little wings that come off of it that hold the strap to it, okay? Now, You have to cut 4 of these, but this is not a symmetrical pattern. So 2 of them are going to be cut with it facing this way. And if you flip it over, 2 more of them get cut that way. And I have that here. And on each of those, I just skived that one side. Okay, that's the side that's going to go into the seam of the bag. Everything else is left at its normal length or normal thickness. Okay. And even if you're making it out of a thinner leather, you might still want to skive that little area just to make sure that that's not a huge transition for your sewing where that's sewn into the bag, okay? So there's all that. Other than that, I have this piece of fabric here. This was sent out in the project box. There were actually a couple of different fabrics because I bought several different fabrics trying to find just the right one. 90% of the bags ended up with this charcoal gray, which is just the right one. This is Cordura fabric. I got it from Sailrite Company, okay? Very easy to find Sailrite Company on Google. It is relatively inexpensive. I bought a massive roll of it once I finally found it. And then the cool thing about it, it doesn't fray, okay? These are cut edges here, and you sit here and do this to it, and it just doesn't fray. I mean, there's a couple of tiny little fibers coming apart there, but that's what makes this perfect for bag liners, is because you don't have to worry about double rolling all your edges over so that you're hiding the fray, okay? You could even build this and leave your interior edges without a binding on them and not worry about fraying, even though it would be prettier if you do bind the edges, okay? So anyway, in the kit is enough of these to line the inside of the front pocket, okay? So like if you unzip this right here, this area is separate from this area. I cannot stick my hand from the inside of the bag through that pocket there. Okay, and vice versa. So there's enough to line, that was in the kit, to line that front area and to line the back of it to match and to make yourself a little pocket for the inside as well, okay? So, without further ado, we're gonna get to building this bad boy. I'm gonna do as much prep work over here as I can before going over to the sewing machine. Oh, actually, no, we're gonna talk about a little bit more. On this one, I am using the black coil zippers, okay? These are the coil ones, and I use them on this project because it's such a small project. These zippers slide very, very easily. They're still great zippers, and they're so easy to use. And I don't use them a lot because a lot of the stuff I make is more, I don't want to say high end because that refers to this as being lower end. But, you know, when I'm using fancy brass hardware and stuff like that on everything, I don't like using the black coil zipper, okay? Because this is, I like using those fancy brass ones and stuff like that. So anyway, I've got 2 pieces of zipper. One's plenty wide, long to go over the top of the bag, and then the other one is the front of the bag. I need 3 slides for it, okay? That's another awesome thing about the black coil zipper. I can just sew the ends of the zipper into the bag and not have to worry about stops and stuff like that I do on the brass zipper stuff, okay? I just sew it right in there, just like I used to with all the zippers before I knew what I was doing with zippers. All right, and then there's a little slide here, okay? And that's to help make your belt on it adjustable. That's what the slide is for, all right? And then we also scoured the internet and bought every one of these dadgum buckles that we could find right here. It's a cool little buckle. There's a company out there called Cobra Buckle or something that has these, and they're like $50 a piece. It's the exact same one as what I'm holding, except these are way less expensive. Anyway, it is a really cool buckle for this project. I like having a buckle on this project because I'm constantly thinking about, well, what if I was somewhere and it got hung up on something? Like if I got a buckle there, then I can just release it and get the heck out and not be worrying about being drugged to my death or something like that if it was hung on something, okay? So maybe I've seen too many terrible movies or something, but I do think about these things. But that's it. That's all the hardware. Besides, oh, my nylon belt material here. Okay, we did a prior box a long time ago. We called it the Slimline waist bag or something. We were trying not to call it the Fanny Pack because I don't like that word. But anyway, we just bought some webbing, and they're like, oh yeah, all webbing's alike, and it's not. So this is nylon webbing, and it's so much nicer and softer than what we offered in the last box. And we actually have a lot of this. We're going to be putting it on our website to sell by the yard as we continue to go forward and use it for other projects and stuff. All right. But there's a 60-inch piece of this in each kit that we built. And 60 inches is plenty long enough for a crossbody of any sorts. I left mine at the full 60 inches, and I've got a good 22 inches of it or so doubled over with the slide, just because I don't need near that much, and I'm a pretty good sized dude. Okay? That's a lot of talking. I'm sorry. Oh, and then I've got my piping core here. Okay? That's it. That's what I'm going to use to make this. All right? So I'm going to kind of rearrange some things on my desk here, gather my thoughts on what we're going to do next, and when I come back, we'll start building zippers and getting ready. All right, so here we go. We're going to build our zippers, all right? Now I went ahead and just put the slide on the small zipper because it's something I'm about to show you anyway on the other zipper. So with coil zippers, the awesome thing is they go any direction, any way. I mean, they're super easy, okay? So I use my little zipper jig here to hold. Let me zoom in on this thing some more. That's all the zoom I got. Okay, so using my zipper jig, I put my slide on there with the open end of it facing away from me. Okay, I've got my zipper here, and it's upside down. All right, so the coils are actually on this side. It's upside down when I put it in the jig, and I just put one end of it in the slide, and then I put the other end of it in the slide. I wiggle them a little bit, and then I pull, and it's as easy as that. Now the other side, this one has opposing slides that'll meet in the middle. The other side's a little bit more tricky because you have to get it lined up to where both sides of the zipper are even. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and separate the very end of the zipper here. Okay, and you can see where this one is longer than this one. And I have to kind of replicate that when I go to put it into the next slide. Okay. Now with the metal zippers, this is a little bit easier because the teeth are much larger, and it's very obvious when you're off by 1 or 2 teeth because one side will have a big bubble in it and the other side will be straight. With the coil zipper, it's a little bit trickier because the teeth are very, very small. So you can be off 1 or 2 and you just barely notice it, but it will affect how the zipper operates. So we may have to do this more than once, okay? Now, once again, this side is longer than this side, so I'm going to put it in first. Then I'm going to put the other side in, and I'm going to pull. Okay, now the easiest way with these big old coil zippers is if you hold it up like this. Let me back it up a little bit. If you hold it up like this, and it lays just straight down and it doesn't cook off to the side one way or the other, then you got it right. Okay, now it's easier to see that if you put sorry, I'm gonna zoom out of this so we can see what we're talking about here. All right, so I pull the zipper slides way up here, further in, like the middle of the zipper somewhere, and I'm holding it. And again, if it just lays straight down, there's gonna be a little bubble where the slides are. That's okay. But what you're looking for is one of those bubbles to be bigger on one side than the other, okay? And yeah, and as long as also when you hold the zipper straight up and down, if it just falls straight down, then you should be good to go. And I think I'm good to go on this one, but again, one little tooth difference doesn't really show up as easily on these zippers, okay? So and again, on this longer zipper that goes across the top of the bag, I did 2 opposing slides. But then on the front pocket, I just did 1 slide and put it on. And that's all I've got to do. I'm not worried about putting stops or anything like that on it. The other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and pre-make my piping. Okay, again, I'm going to try to get everything I can done here before I go over to the sewing machine so that maybe we won't have to move the camera and go back and forth, and we can kind of streamline this process a little bit. Now, I already made one of my pipings. Again, just because, well, no use in having to show you twice, right? So to make my piping, there's two different ways. Some people will just take it over to the sewing machine as is. They'll put the cord in the leather and then they'll run it through a piping foot on the machine and just sew the cord, or sew right up against the cord into the leather. And there's nothing wrong with that method. That's actually the most common method in the world. The way I do it is just, I taught myself how to do it, and I didn't know about sewing it in, and so this is how I make piping, and I'm sure there's 10 or 12 reasons not to do it this way, but it's the way I do it, okay? I am not the know-all be-all. I'm just the guy that tried to figure all this stuff out too. I'm sure we all do that in our own shops. Anyway, so what I've done is I've taken a very wide piece of double-sided tape, okay? I cut a small piece of it that's only about 3/4 of an inch long, and I put it at the very end. And then I took another piece, and it goes the entirety of the rest of my thing, my piping, okay? Now, here's my piping core. So what I'm gonna do is I'm going to uncover the double-sided tape, but I'm leaving that little tab at the end. It's still covered, okay? That'll be part of my transition, my splice, as I go all the way around the bag to splice the piping back into itself. I'm gonna lay my piping core just right smack in the middle of this tape. And this does take a little bit of practice. I used to stick my fingers to it all the time and stuff like that, and I mean, just really made it hard on myself. And yeah, I'm making it much easier now that I've done it a few hundred times. Okay, I'll lay it all the way down the center. Now, if I'm doing a really long piece of piping, I only do a couple of feet at a time. I don't try to do that all the way down to 60 inches or something on a giant project. Okay, so now that I'm done with that, I just fold this piping in half, and that's what creates my nice professional looking piping. The biggest thing I want to tell you is make sure that that core is back here in the back of this fold. You don't want it away from the back, and you don't want air in between the core and the back of the leather there. If there is air in between there, it'll look bad on your finished product, okay? It's not gonna hurt anything, it just won't look nice, all right? So that's why we strive for professionalism, or whatever our our version of that might be. Good enough. When I was in the Army, it was always good enough for government work. And then usually turned out it wasn't. Whoops. All right, so here we go. I'm squeezing the tape back to itself all the way down here. There we go. Now, I'm gonna take my handy dandy little roller here, and I'm just gonna roll it right up against that core, and it's really gonna create a crisp piece of piping. Yeah. All right, and now I throw that to the side. All right, now let's start putting zippers onto things, okay? I'm gonna use a lot of double-sided tape here to hold things together and whatever else. So the first thing I'm gonna do, put my tape dispenser over here on the side. I almost put it over on the left, but not once have I ever used it on my left, and I'm sure I'd be awkward the whole time trying to make that work. So this is the front pocket, the main part of it, not the top of it, but the main part of it. Okay, and I'm gonna go ahead and take my my zipper, or my double-sided tape, and put it right there along that top edge, okay? Again, if you didn't skive it, it's fine, but we have to make sure that we do these things straight. And my phone is ringing, and it's an important call, so I'll be right back. All right, here we come back. Sorry, I wasn't even realizing that I need to zoom in a little bit better for you. Okay, so again, this is the front piece of the bag. Okay, and I'm just gonna take the tape off the back of that and fold that piece over. Since this one's skived, I'll fold it over along the skive. But if yours is not skived, you just have to make sure that you fold over about a 1/2 inch of it or so, and that it's straight all the way across. Okay? Don't want it crooked. Even with the scav, this one's looking a little crooked, so let me figure that out right quick. Okay, we're good. All right, and now I'm gonna take my zipper, and my zipper is quite a bit longer than this, and that's okay, all right? Because honestly, when I sew this to this, it's so much easier for that zipper slide to be past my leather, and then I can just unzip it to the point I need it and trim it off later. And then, unlike previous builds where I've had to sew a little bit, then move the zipper slide, then sew some more, well, we can just stick this one flat down and then move the zipper slide after we're done. Okay, so I'm gonna cut another piece of tape. I'm gonna put it right here on the back of that fold over. And I don't want it all the way up to the top edge there, okay? If I put it all the way up to the top edge, then I risk seeing shiny, sticky stuff once my project is complete, and we don't like shiny, sticky stuff on our projects, okay? That says made in China, not made in our workshop. Unless your workshop happens to be in China, in which case, you know, whatever. All right, now, the next thing we have to worry about is which direction do we want the zipper to face? Okay, I'm gonna bring the camera up to see me here. Whoop, that's the zoom. Oof, this is bad, I'm sorry. I should have zoomed out before I got to my face. So what we have to think about is if we wear this bag, and this is a minor thing, like if you're making them for people, then just make it as if they were a right-hander. And I'm thinking if I'm a right-hander, I'm gonna be wearing it this way, okay? Over my right shoulder, so that I can, sorry, nope, other way. Do. I'm crazy. All right. To where a right-hander could reach into it, okay? That front pocket was unzipped, and that's what confused me. So if I'm wearing it over my left shoulder as a right-hander that would be able to put my hand in it, I want this zipper up when closed, okay? So that means when I'm laying it out right here, I'm going to put that zipper, the slide of it, on the right-hand side, okay? And I'll show you, like right now, I put it on the right-hand side so that when I transition that to where I would wear the bag, the slide is up here on top, okay? And that's just one of those little things that, you know, makes it more convenient, especially if you're custom making it for someone. If they're a left-hander, they'll really appreciate you putting the zipper on the opposite side, because apparently left-handers have a hard life as it is, okay? My sister's a lefty and I make fun of her constantly. So, anyway, we're gonna go back to the table here and we're gonna stick that zipper on. So, again, the slide will be over here on the left. Well, now that I've turned it over, it's gonna be on the left, okay? If it's right side up, it's on the right, all right? I know that that's opposite for you right now because you're looking from across my bench. But right now, if it's how it would be if it were laying on the table in front of me and the zipper slide is on the right. Okay? And I'm just sticking that bad boy on there. Now, here's where this gets just slightly tricky, okay? Not difficult at all, but a little bit tricky. This is the finished size of this project, is this piece right here, okay? Here's the template for it. We'll use the template, okay? So we don't get confused with all the brown pieces. Now, once I have taken and folded this piece over and covered up my zipper, I need all of these pieces to be the same width as this piece right here. See what I'm saying? I need, from top to bottom, this all needs to be the same size. Otherwise, we have failed and we will have a very, very difficult to build bag, okay? So what I'm gonna do So I'm going to take some tape and I'm going to put on the back of that piece there and fold a good bit of it over. All right, I did not take the tape or the backing off the tape yet, all right? But I'm folding a nice fat piece of that over because, again, when I put this template up there, I want to make sure that from here to here, these pieces equal the width of this piece, okay? If they don't, then the front will be larger than the back and your gussets won't fit right, okay? Now, I told you that the back piece of this kit, or sorry, the larger kit, let me just start over. This is the only difference in the small kit and the large kit, is this one piece right here, okay? You're going to do the exact same thing with it, but with those little notches cut out, once you fold this over, it should just be slightly folded up further than those notches are cut out. And it should line up just right to make a hidden zipper so that the front of this doesn't just have a big old blaring zipper in it, okay? So now that I've folded that back and I've got a little crease there kind of showing me where it belongs, I'm gonna go ahead and stick that down. There we go. Now, I'm going to stick that back up there, and I'm going to put my template back on it, and just make sure everything's right before I tape that to my zipper too, and then this piece will be ready to sew together. It is good. It's within about 1/16 of an inch, and that is plenty good enough. Okay? So now, I'm going to take and put some tape right there on my zipper, stick this to it, and then this piece will be ready to wait for the sewing machine here in a little bit. Okay? So I'm going to put the tape kind of high on the zipper, because again, this is a hidden zipper. My sew line for this top line is going to be up pretty high. When I sew the bottom line, it's going to be real close to the edge of that fold over, but when I sew this top one, it's going to have to be, of course, above where the zipper tracks are, so it'll be quite a bit higher. Okay, and we'll go over that while we're sewing. So I just butt those little folds up to each other there. Just like that. Press it on there to cover up that zipper. Just like that. Now I'm going to go ahead and just scribe me a little stitch line on there. And what I'll use is a scratch awl. And I can see all that zipper, okay? And I want my sew line to be about 1/4 of an inch away from that zipper. Maybe a little bit less, maybe 3/16 of an inch away from that zipper, okay? So I'll find my little scratch awl here and give it a scratchy scratch all the way down. Just like that. Okay, now I'll know where to sew that. I know it's very difficult to see that scribed line, but it's not as hard for me to see because I'm right here on it. But there it is, very, very lightly scribed line. Okay, now when we go to the sewing machine, all we're going to do is we'll sew that line down and we'll sew the bottom line down. Then we're going to sew the piping onto the front of this and the lining onto the back of it all at the same time. Okay, and I'll show you what all that looks like when we get to that point. But we got a little bit more prep work to do because we got more zippers to work with. Now, zippers. So how we had the front of it to where it had to match that other template once all the pieces were put together. Well, your top gussets and their zipper, when they're done, need to be the same size as this template. Okay, so however you choose to do it, whether you're trying to make a hidden zipper or you're leaving it open, it doesn't matter. As long as once all the folding is done and the zipper is in between the pieces, it's approximately the same width as this template right here. Okay, this is the bottom gusset piece. These are the top gusset pieces. If you're doing something crazy with it and you need to thin these pieces and make them a little bit more narrow, go for it. But when it's all said and done, they need to be about the same width. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and take and I'm going to fold that whole skive over. On each of them. And then we'll kind of see where we're at on how wide it's left. All right, so there's one of them. Now I got to do the same thing to the other one. Same thing, we're going to fold it all the way over. There we go. All right, so if I lay these two next to each other, let's kind of see how they compare to that bottom template. There you go. Currently, it's a little bit more than 1/4 of an inch more narrow, which is perfect for what I want because I don't want to do a hidden zipper on this. Okay, so just like on the other one, I'm going to move these slides all the way to the very end, being very careful not to accidentally take them off the end. And then once I put these two with the zipper in between, we should be just about right on sizing. Okay? Boom. Right on the money. Okay? So I got to tape all that down. So once again, a couple of pieces of tape. I don't want them all the way out on the edge of that fold. I honestly don't understand how people live without double-sided tape. Man, I love this stuff. So much faster than glue, so much easier than not holding it or trying to clip it. And as long as you do all your seams right, you won't have sticky glue showing at the end, or sticky tape showing at the end. There we go. Now, here we go. Unzip one, or take the paper off one. I'm gonna lay it up here, make sure that zipper's nice and straight in the middle of it. And then the second one should be easier because the whole first one's holding it nice and straight for me. Okay, and I do want to make sure though when I'm doing this, I want these ends to line up just perfectly. I definitely don't want them not straight with each other, because then it'll mess up the construction later. All right, these pieces are also now ready for the sewing machine, okay? So, the last part we're gonna work on before we move to the sewing machine is gonna be these straps, okay? So again, I've got 4 of these little trapezoid pieces, all right? And 2 of them should be fronts and 2 of them should be backs. So let's just go ahead and arrange them as if they were already on the bag. The wide part sews into the bag, and then I don't really know the way to say this, but less of an angle on top, but more of an angle on bottom, okay? So when I line this up, it'll look just like this. Here's the right side, and here is, somewhere else is the left side. Must be this piece. Yeah, there we go. Okay, so this is a steeper angle down here at the bottom of the bag than it is at the top of the bag. And then each of these has a pair that it goes with. And that ain't it. So there we go, there's that pair. And there's that pair. Okay, now I need to go ahead and put the webbing into these and be ready to sew those down before, of course, we go to sew the whole thing into the bag. All right. So once again, we're going to look at how do we want our buckle. Maybe you want the buckle on top of the bag. Like me, for mine, how I wear it, my buckle is up here on my shoulder. Okay. But you may want to put the buckle on the bottom, or you may just not give a dang. And that's your prerogative. Welcome to being American. So anyway, no big deal. It doesn't really matter to as far as functionality goes where the buckle is, but those are our choices. All right. Now, we figured out where our trapezoids are and all that. This one's going to be for my buckle side. So what I've done here is I've cut me a piece that's about 6-7 inches long or so, and I'm going to end up sandwiching it in between these 2 layers, like this. Okay? And then what I will end up doing is putting a buckle on it, like this. And when I do, I'm going to go ahead and take it back out of there. I'm going to fold this end under itself, like that, and then fold the top down on it, and I'll go ahead and I'll end up sewing it right there. Okay? And it does a few things. One, it's going to be very, very strong. But 2, folding that under ensures that that edge right there will never fray, because it's not an exposed edge anymore. Okay? So, but I can do all of that. Actually, you know what? I'm just going to go ahead and go do it. So, again, I've put this through this entire buckle. This buckle has this little separator here, and I'm enclosing that in it. I don't need it. I've pulled it out just enough, 1.5 inches or so, that I can fold it over. Okay, and so there's what the side view of that looks like, bottom view, and then once again, taking it out, this is folded over, then all of it's folded over, and I'm going to sew it right there, okay? And I've got a sewing machine over in the corner that already has black thread on it, so I'm going to use that one, and I'm not going to move the cameras and everything because it's literally 3 seconds of sewing. I'm just going to go back and forth right there and stitch this buckle in here right quick so that I can build the rest of this. Be right back. Okay, so I got that stitched on there real quick. There it is. All right, now I am going to stuff this in between the layers of this and this. Now when that's all said and done, I'm going to do the exact same thing with the remainder of the strap and this side, okay? But they're going to be done in the exact same manner, so we're only going to do it once on camera, okay? So I'm going to take some pieces of tape here and put them on the top and bottom sides of this. And then I'm going to take another piece of tape, and not everybody has the big wide tape like I do. You don't have to have it, but I'm going to put it right there in the middle of it. Okay, and then if I butt where I folded that over and sewed up to that the edge of the leather there, this is down here in the skived edge where I'll be sewing it into the bag. So I'm going to shorten it a little bit. There we go. Now that won't be in the skived edge or the sewn edge of the bag. Okay? So I'm going to go ahead and take and remove the backing off the tape right there. I'm going to put this right smack in the middle of it, right up against that folded edge of the webbing. Stick it in. Then I'm going to take another piece of tape and put on top of it. Just like that. Then I'm going to grab its matched pair that goes on top of it. I'm going to lay it on top of it to where it's nice and straight and make sure everything's good and aligned. Then I'm going to remove the backing off that other piece of tape. Just like that. Okay? Now, this is when I'll pick it up and I'll remove the tape off these other two pieces here. Squeeze that together like that. Okay, and then I got to do it over here too. I'm just lining up my edges really nicely. There you go. And these, it's a simple design to do it this way, but it's the one thing I don't like about it, these are the only naked edges on the entire bag. I thought about making it to where you had to skive and roll them over and all that, but it would really complicate the putting this bag together, and I don't want this thing to be intimidating. It's not a difficult bag to make as it is. But that being said, if that's something you're into, make that a little bit wider, roll those edges over, and make them to where they're not naked edges, and then you won't have any naked edges. Okay? All right. So here, I'm going to do all that exact same stuff with the other end of the strap, and I'm going to leave the strap as long as I can. Okay? I'm not shortening it at all. And that way, you know, I can make all those adjustments after everything's put together. Okay, so I'm going to burn that down a little bit so it's not frayed. I'm going to do all the tape and everything, and I'm going to stick this one in here just like I did on the first one. Just like that right there. And when we come back, we've got one more thing to do, and then we'll be at the sewing machine. All right, so here we are. We're almost ready to go to the sewing machine where we will pretty much be for the rest of the assembly of this entire project. I don't like having to move the camera back and forth a lot. It is now day 2 of this video. I ran out of time yesterday, had to go to class last night. Anyway, but the only other thing I wanted to do before going to the sewing machine is start up with my lining. Okay, now if you're lining this and you got the kit, the project box kit, there's enough liner here to cut out 3 pieces wide. Okay, and that's how many pieces you need to build this project. So 2 of the pieces will be, one of them will just be lining the back of it. One of them will be the separation piece between the front pocket and the main body. And then that third one, you can make any size or shape that you want to create pockets inside of the bag itself, okay? And what I have done, besides losing my silly knife, what I have done with them is that third piece, I just cut it about yay tall and then fold the top of it over. And on the smaller one, I just leave it as a full-size pocket, goes all the way across it. and then it's part of the back wall of it, which is this piece here. But on the larger ones, I actually sewed another line down the center of that liner, the lining pocket, just to kind of create some separation, because that's big enough I could put my wallet on one side, my phone on the other side, or something like that. Okay, so I'm just gonna, since I don't have my little rotary knife that I thought I had sitting here, I'm gonna go ahead and just pre-cut a couple of pieces. And what I'll do is I'll sew my piping onto this piece, and the lining to the back of it all at the same time as like a basting stitch, and then I'll just trim off the excess liner after I've sewn that. So there's piece number one. Now I need another piece for the front side that, like I said, is going to separate the front pocket from the main body of the bag. And again, I'm cutting these oversized, and then I'll just trim them after I'm done with them. Okay. So there's that second piece right there. And then I need one more piece that's going to be that inside pocket. And what I'll do here is I will just go ahead and trim this a little bit closer to fit. I'm going to take some double-sided tape. Now this stuff has kind of a softer, if you're using this Cordura fabric, you'll notice it has a little bit softer of one side and a little bit rougher of one side. I use the rough on the back side up against the leather, so that the inside of the bag has a softer appearance and feel. Okay, so what I'm going to do though is I'm just going to take me a piece of double-sided tape and put it along one edge of this, like so. Trim to fit. Okay, and I'm just going to fold that edge down. And stick it back to itself. And that'll give me a nice rolled top edge of that pocket. And I will sew that line as well. You can sew it on your regular sewing machine. That's one thing I love about this fabric, is it's thin, but you can sew it just like leather, and it won't try to, on the sewing machine, you know, a lot of leather sewing machines pull thread very, very tight. And a lot of fabrics that would try to take that and really scrunch up what it's sewing. But this stuff, it seems to do really, really well with. So, yeah. So, we're going to move the camera, go to the sewing machine, and we're going to start assembling all the pieces that we've prepared. And before you know it, we're going to have a bag. So, when I come back, we'll be at the sewing machine. I got to move a lot of stuff around to get the camera right and get the lights right. And we'll get this going. All right, so here we are at the sewing machine. This is a Cobra Class 18 sewing machine. I am using a size 138 thread, a size 21 needle. Okay, the thread I've chosen to use is the natural colored. It's my favorite, and it creates a nice contrast with the color of leather that I've got here. Okay. I don't like white thread. I've explained it a few times. White to me is very bright on a project, and I don't want it to be overpowering on this project. I prefer the natural color. It looks white against darker leathers, but it's not bright. So there we go. That's my 2 cents on that subject. So the first thing I'm going to sew, this is that top gusset with the zipper, and I'm going to sew down the two sides of the zipper. Now when I do this, I always sew it to where I'll just start at one end and work my way all the way down, then I'll come up the other side. But let's see if I can zoom in a little bit more here on this. There we go. There we go. So I've got my center foot here on my sewing machine, and then I've got the presser foot over here on the edge. And when I'm sewing up against the zipper, I like to put the center foot about 1/8 of an inch or so away from that fold over of the leather, and then the presser foot's over here. I'll see a lot of people that will come over here and try to put the presser foot on the edge of that folded over seam, and it just doesn't work as well, okay? Let's see if I can hit this from a different angle so that maybe you can see more of what I see. Yeah, there you go. So if that presser foot is over here on the edge of the fold over, one, my stitch line's further away from it than I want to be. And then two, if it falls off the edge of that, I'll have a nice straight stitch line, and then all of a sudden, boom, over here and more stitches over here. Okay, so if I put it over here where the center foot is up against that fold, then it's just going to work out better for me. And that's what I try to teach others to do in my classes and stuff, and it seems to work for most. Okay? Now, I don't have my light turned on because it just creates a wicked, terrible glare and all that stuff. And I can see well enough with the fancy little studio light that I got over my shoulder here. So, anyway, I'll just start out with a couple of back stitches. And then I'm going to go forward, okay? And just sew at your comfort level. Try to keep it nice and straight, and try to keep that stitch line about 1/8 of an inch from the fold over there. This is generally about my speed on a sewing machine. I could go faster, but I'm sure I would make a lot more mistakes. Okay. Other tips on the sewing machine, I am not pressing down on this leather at all. I'm just using this hand to kind of guide it right and left. The sewing machine is going to pull the leather through as it needs to. It does not need my help with that. And if I'm pressing down on this piece of leather, I'm creating resistance, and I'll have uneven stitches due to that resistance because the machine won't be able to pull the leather like it needs to. Okay, now I've gotten to the other end of that. So I've done my back stitch. Now I'm just going to pull some excess thread out of here, clip that off, and start again on the other side. Okay, but what I'm actually going to do is I'm just going to set this piece to the side, and I will sew the other side of it just like I did this side. Okay, but you don't need to watch me do that because that just wastes your time. If you need some further explanation or something like that, you can always just hit that little rewind button. And but if you've got it, then you don't have to watch me do it twice. So now this one, I'm going to sew it next. It's the front pocket piece, okay, with the hidden zipper. And I'll go ahead and sew the hard one, what I call the hard one first, which will be the scribed line, and then I'll come back and I'll sew the other line just like I did those. So I scribed that little line, and now I'm going to stitch right along it. So once again, I'll start out with a little bit of a back stitch. And as we come to the end, I'll do the exact same back stitch and clip my thread, and then I'll spin it around, and I will sew the other line to show you where I'm going to do it. Okay, I'll pull that one out. Now the other line, once again, I'm just going to put that center foot 1/8 of an inch or so from the base of the line, or the fold over, sorry. And I'll do a couple of back stitches, and then I'll go forward and sew it down the length of it. Once I get to the end, once again, a couple of back stitches, and we'll call that good. Easy peasy, lemon squeezy. If you're hand sewing, exact same thing, okay? Not a big deal, just takes longer. I had somebody in one of my videos comment that, oh yeah, you show it, you know, you say that all these things can be hand stitched, but that's not really possible. You need to actually try hand stitching one of your own projects. Well, I've hand stitched plenty of my own projects, and honestly, it's easier to hand stitch difficult seams than it is to machine stitch them. It just takes longer. I think part of the problem is people have gotten a lot of those patterns where all the holes are pre-punched on each individual piece before they put them together, and then they just have to match up the holes. I'm not a huge fan of those. To me, they're not conducive to being able to put a pattern together and then understand how it goes together, helping you create your own patterns and your own ways to modify those patterns to your needs. Okay, I hope that makes sense, but it probably doesn't. All right, the next thing I'm going to sew is going to be one of the trapezoid pieces that we did with the webbing in it. Okay, so I'm going to imagine that this bag is sitting in front of me already. Okay, and if you have to, you can lay it out. Let me zoom out so we can see this. If you have to, just lay it out as it would be, because the big thing is you don't want to accidentally sew one of these upside down, and it won't hurt it. You can still flip it over later to install it in the bag, but what it'll do is it'll make your pretty stitches on the back of your piece and not on the front. Okay, so I want to make sure that I'm sewing on the fronts of both of these two wings, so that they look nice. All right, so here I've laid it out, and again the big angle of these goes on the bottom, the flatter angle goes on the top. I hope that makes sense. And both of them right now, this is the right side up. Okay, and then I put a rubber band around all this excess piece here. It's a smart idea, because when we go to sew the bag up, this will actually have to be stuffed inside the bag, and that just kind of holds it into place for us. Okay, so I'm going to throw this piece to the side, and I will sew up one of these. Now all I do on these is I start on the top side of it. Okay, like this is the top of the bag up here. I'll do a couple of back stitches here, and then I will start sewing down right along the edge of this top piece, and then when I get to where it's going to go across the strap, I just turn the corner and go across the strap. Let me zoom back in a little bit so you can see that. Okay, try to keep my hand out your way there. I'm using my finger here as kind of an edge guide. I do have a drop down edge guide on this machine, but honestly I use my finger more than anything. Okay, so here I am. I'm at a point where I need to turn it, so I'll leave the needle down. Okay, and I'll lift the presser foot, spin this sucker around, and I will just keep sewing straight across that strap. Okay, now depending on what machine you're using or how your presser feet are set up, you might have to lift your presser foot just a little bit to get it to come up onto that thicker part where the strap is. Or it might just climb right on it. But if it tries to do, 2 stitches without moving, then it's stuck on it, and it needs a little bit of assistance getting up over that hump. Okay, and I'm going to sew across it until I get to the other side. And then get me a stitch right in the corner of that. There we go. And I'll turn it one more time. And now I'm going to sew up the bottom end of it here. Okay, and then a back stitch or 2 at the end. And we'll pull that piece out too. I will do the other strap holder, the little trapezoid set, the exact same way, but once again, I'll just do it off camera so you don't have to watch. But there's our end goal, end result right there. Okay, and again, had I sewn it backwards accidentally, then the back sides of your stitches are never as pretty as the front. There are some things you can do to try to pretty them up later, but it's best to just try to keep your pretty stitches on the finished side of your project. Okay? So again, I'll do this other one off camera, but it's done in the exact same manner. So that leaves us with some other pieces. I didn't bring them all over. Hang on a second. I'm only 2 feet away. All right, so I folded down the edge of my pocket piece, okay? That one we put some tape on and folded down. Now I'm just gonna stitch that edge real quick, and that'll make sure that tape doesn't have to do all the work of holding that edge down, okay? Real quick and easy, I'm gonna do a back stitch, and then I'm gonna run it through here. And one more reason I love this fabric, like I said, it's super thin, but it's also rigid enough that the machine's not going to try to crinkle it all up and bunch it up with the pulling the stitches tight. Okay. All right, and then like I said, I would take this piece and sew on the larger one. I have taken, bring the camera down, sorry. I have taken this piece, this is the small bag again, and I've taken this piece and split that pocket by sewing it to the back liner of the bag. And that way I have two separate pockets. But on the smaller bag, I don't feel that that's as necessary because it's a pretty small bag and those would be very small pockets and they'd probably just end up being too small to actually use. Okay? So, all that to say, so what I'm going to do though is I'm going to grab some double-sided tape right quick. I'm going to tape the pocket to the main backing piece, the main lining piece here, and then I'll tape that lining piece to the back side of the bag, okay? So let me back out here so you'll see all that process. Grab my double-sided tape and a pair of scissors. Now, you can perfectly trim these pieces so that you know exactly where they're going to fall in your bag and stuff like that. The way I'm doing it is not quite scientific. But what I'm going to do, like I said, is I'm going to stick this pocket to this liner here. And that might even not be far enough down. Let me bring it down just a little bit more. Hopefully I can salvage that tape, not have to cut another piece. I only want the pocket to come up about 2/3 the height of the actual bag, the interior. So I'd initially set it up a little bit high. If it's too high, you're not going to get anything behind it inside the bag, okay? Now. Okay, so I did that. Now what I'll do is I'll turn this over and I'll lay this piece up on here and I'll tape it down. Then I'm going to put my piping on this and run my piping all the way around. I'm going to baste all that together at once. All those layers will be sewn at one time. This particular fabric, now if you're not using this fabric, but this fabric will stick to the back of this leather pretty well, even though it's not taped or glued or anything like that. If you're using a different kind of fabric, you may want to use some Super 77 glue or something like that and stick those together, or even a lot more double-sided tape to kind of hold those layers together so that they'll sew together well. But again, I don't need to worry about it with this particular leather or this particular fabric, because this rough side of the fabric really does a great job kind of sticking to the back of my leather. And yeah, so it won't move while I'm sewing and rotating it under the machine. Okay. So I'm just going to throw a couple of pieces of double-sided tape on here. One on the top, one on the bottom. And then anything that I accidentally overcut, I'll just put a little piece on the side there. There we go. So I will remove the backing off that tape, and I'll tell you what, I'll be smart about it just in case, and I'll just do one side at a time. Stick that side down and then do the next side. And I'm kind of feeling for where the top of that pocket is under there as I lay it down. And there we go. Okay, I'll do the same with the other side now that that side's stuck. Okay, and then the little side pieces that I just barely put a piece of tape on, just because that's what I had extra cut out there. Now, I'm going to start piping this, and I want to make sure that when I put the piping on it, that I am doing it right side up, because now there's a pocket in there, so it definitely has a top and a bottom. Before, it didn't have a top and a bottom, but now it does. So the top of that pocket is right along here, so this is the top, and I want my piping transition to be down at the bottom center of the bag. Okay, so I'm going to start my piping right now. All right, I've shown other videos where I did the piping, but we're still going to go over it all just like it's the first time we ever did it. All right, and I will try to keep my hands out of the way as I sew all this. We'll see how good of a job I do with that. Just 1 second here. Okay, I'm going to grab this tiny little pair of detail scissors here, because as I get to the corners of with the piping, I'm going to clip the corners so that it'll lay a little bit better and be a little bit smoother going in there. Okay, all right, so here I go. And again, I am just basting all this together, okay? This stitch line really doesn't matter very much. And that is an important phone call. I will be right back. All right, welcome back. Apologize for that. I had an important phone call, and then some folks were here to see me, and I don't like to disappoint. Okay, so again, I'm just basting the piping on here, okay? And I'm going to start over here on the corner of the bag, but my transition piece, my splice, if you will, is over here in about the middle of the bag, okay? The reason I'm starting my sewing over here is because once I get all the way around to this back corner over here, I'll have room to lift this up to complete that transition piece before, and complete that splice before I sew all the way across there. And if I start sewing right here, I won't have room to lift it up and do any work there, and it'll make it much more difficult to do. Okay, so here I go. I'm just going to do a real quick stitch around the very edge. Okay, this is just a basting stitch, and it's just to hold all this crap together for when I do my actual assembly. Okay, now I am to this corner, obviously, after doing 1 or 2 stitches, and so now I'm just going in about every 1/4 of an inch. I'm cutting a little relief cut into the piping so that it'll lay a little bit better as I go all the way around it. Now I'm not making that relief cut all the way up to the core of the piping, because I don't want to accidentally see that cut in the finished product. Okay, so that'll help it to really lay nicely, and then I'll just continue sewing around the corner here, and I'll repeat one more time that this is just a basting stitch. Even if you accidentally run off the side of the leather, just keep stitching. It's not a big deal. Okay. Alright, so I got it around that very first corner there, and I didn't worry about doing a back stitch at the very beginning because I'm going to go all the way around the project. But while I've got this where there's lots of room to play here, I'm going to go ahead and do my relief cuts for the next corner. And there we go, that'll lay real nicely. So I can just keep on stitching. Okay, and I'm going to repeat this exact process with the front part of the bag as well. Okay, now that the zipper is sewn into the front part of the bag, it's exactly like the back part, except it has a zipper in it. And I'm going to repeat the same process of putting the liner on it and putting the piping on it. And basting it all together as if it were just one solid piece of leather, and the zipper doesn't really matter. I just, I'm going to, remember we had the, where'd it go? Here it is. We had extra zipper on here, and then I put the slide way up, but I will bring the slide back to where it's within the project. Okay, and I will put the liner behind it, and I will put the piping around it, and I will sew it all together. If I were you, I would unzip it a good bit, because you want these to butt up to each other, okay? If I only unzipped it a little bit, then they wouldn't be able to butt up to each other because of the slide. So I'm going to unzip it, about halfway or so that I can butt those two sides up to each other. And I'll otherwise sew it exactly as I've done this front piece with its lining and everything. So I'm explaining all that because, again, I'm not going to do it on video since it's the exact same thing as what we're already doing. Okay? So after I'm done stitching this piece on, I'm going to cut the camera. I'm going to sew all these other things that I said, oh yeah, I'm going to sew that other side. I'm got to do all that, and I'll go ahead and sew that front piece as well. And then when that's all done, we'll come back and start doing our final assembly. And pretty soon we're going to have us a bag. So here I am just making my relief cuts for yet another corner here. Okay. There we go. I think these two different colors are going to be really nice for this project. About to go to the Pendleton Leather Show in another week or so, and I may actually carry one of these through the airport and stuff. I fly to that show. It's the only one we don't drive to, I believe. At least at this point in time. Okay, one more set of relief cuts on a corner. This little pair of scissors is called Guggenheim. I found them online. Leandra Martin actually told me about them. She does a lot of really great bag making and bag making classes. And she showed me a pair, and they are just really great little scissors. The ones she showed me were actually quite a bit larger. They were more this size right here. But man, these little bitty ones sure are great at the sewing machine for cutting threads and cutting relief corners and simple little cuts like that. So you may want to look them up because they're not very expensive compared to what you would think they would be. Alright, as soon as I've turned this corner here, I'm going to start working on my transition, my splice of my piping. Alright, so I have gotten around the corner and I want to leave as much room as I can to work on this. Alright, center the camera on the part that I'm doing here a little bit better. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to feel on this beginning piece. Remember, it still has this tape inside of it. And I'm going to feel where the core stops there, because we stopped that core just short of that tape when we put it on there. I'm going to feel where that core stops, and that's where I want to cut the other end so that they butt up, the core butts up to itself inside there. Okay, so I'm feeling around. I can feel where it is. I'm just going to make a little fingernail mark in the other side, the other end, and that way I can cut that piece out or trim that piece off. There we go. Now all I'm going to do is remove the tape out of the inside of this piece, and then I'll put this other end of it inside of it and wrap it tightly around it. You want to make sure it's good and tight. Okay, that's a German technical term, good and tight. There we go. There's my little transition, okay? You do want to try to do that down as flat to the leather as you can, because if you hold it 2 inches above the leather, it's going to be longer than you want it, and it won't press down like it needs to, okay? So, now I'm just going to sew all the way across all that and go back to where I started sewing and do my over stitches, since I didn't do back stitches. All right, now I'm going to do 2 or 3 over stitches here. There we go. Now that whoop, didn't cut my back thread, did I? My bottom thread. Now that that is done, I can take my scissors. See where that pocket runs across there now? Very good, very good. It's got a pocket. I can take my scissors and trim off my liner just even with the leather, okay? So no need to show you all that other than here's what I'm doing. I'm just trimming the liner off with the edge of the leather, okay? So again, I'm going to sew up the other side in the exact same manner, the front end that has the zipper on it. I'm going to finish sewing all the things that I said I was going to sew off camera. I already did one of the two on camera. And when I come back, we will start final assembly and get this bag put together. So doesn't that sound fun? Look what you've done. See you in a few. All right, we've got a couple more things to do. And then again, it's going to be final assembly time, okay? Now, this is my back piece. It was that first piece that you saw me basting all the piping and everything to. It's got the little pocket in the inside. Okay, I need to baste my little wings onto it. All right, now the first several of these I made, I had to really concentrate, like which way is up, which way is down, blah, blah, blah. And to make it easy, my pretty stitches are facing up, okay? Again, when I wear it, I'm going to have the buckle up on my shoulder and not down below. Just a personal preference. You can make it any way you want. But anyway, if you just stick them on there and line up those edges like that, then you can go ahead and just baste that sucker on there too. Now, what I do is I put the top of that just as where it's coming around this corner where that goes to straight. That's where I put that top piece, okay? And once again, I'm just sewing right out at the very, very edge and basting it on there because the seam that'll actually hold it on is going to be the one that includes piping and everything else once we put our piping foot on, okay? So anyway, this piece is a little bit wide and it goes down past the corner down here, just the slightest little bit. So you just fudge it in a little bit, make sure that you're stitching it onto the piece that's behind it. And all I'm gonna do is one or two reverse stitches, because again, it's a basting stitch. And then I'm gonna run it up. Okay, and once I get to the top, I'll do a back stitch or two. Pull it out of my machine. Snippy snip. Then I'm going to spin it around and do the exact same thing with the other piece. Okay, so kind of line it up to where I know that it's even with the other side. Baste it onto. Okay, and then as soon as we've got these on, the next thing we're going to do is attach our top and bottom gussets, and then we're going to clip this bag together and start putting it final assembly, putting the front and the back to the gussets. And once again, you'll have made a pretty cool project. There we go. All right. Clip all these little threads off here. Then I'm going to set that aside for a moment. Okay. Now I'm going to grab, that's my top gusset, right? And I sewed my two lines. And I'm going to clip the edges of my zipper, the ends of my zipper off. I moved my zipper slides to the middle of the project so that they don't affect anything. Okay, and I'll clip the ends of the zipper off. And again, all these zippers on this coil zipper are just sewn into the seams, and that's going to work great. All right, so what I need to do is place, this is my bottom gusset, and I'm going to place it on top of this top gusset, and again, they should be relatively the same width, okay? You can have like 1/8 of an inch difference and it won't really matter. Even 1/4 of an inch, if you're careful, won't matter. But any more than that, and you needed to be a little bit more careful with your folding of your seams and stuff near your zipper, okay? That's what affects that, is how wide you've left your area for your zipper. Okay, so now we're gonna sew this together face to face, nice and straight across. Okay, clip that off. And then we're going to take that bottom gusset piece and fold it back. And then we're going to sew across that. Okay, I call that a lap seam. I'm sure that's probably not the right word for it, but that's what I've always called it, because it's lapped over. So anyway, I need to check my bobbin. I haven't checked it in a while. Should be plenty. This is a small bag. Yeah. Okay. So I've lapped that back, and I do want to make sure though when I sew this seam down that this isn't askew and it creates a straight line from the side of the top gusset to the side of the bottom gusset, and that it doesn't, again, turn left or right, okay? So I've lapped that over. Now I'm just going to once again stitch right across that after I move all my scissors out from under my reverse lever. Do. Okay, there we go, sewing across it. I want this line to be as nice and straight as I can, straight across there, parallel to the fold, because it will be a very noticeable line in my finished project. And I just do one single little back stitch on it because honestly it's going to be inside of the side seams of the bag once everything's done. And I'll hold this up for the camera right quick so that in case there was any confusion about how I sewed all that. Okay, so I sewed it once, then flopped that down and sewed it across there again, and now I've got to do that same thing on the other side. Just like that. Alright, and you need it, when it's done, it will be a inside out circle. Okay. So here we're going to sew this one. This is still a fairly easy seam, but once I flop that over, then we're going to have to do some manipulating to get it up under the machine because it no longer wants to lay flat. Okay. So again, we'll sew our first seam, do a back stitch or two, pull it out, clip it off, and then this is the part where we're going to have to do a little bit of manipulating to get it back under the machine and keep everything straight and all that. So what I normally do is I'll just hold it. You can either put it behind the machine or in front of it. It does not matter. But you got to hold it to where, once again, the side of the gusset's straight all the way from the front to the top to the bottom gusset. You want that line to be straight across. And whoops, I'm sewing it backwards. Again, I want the edge of my presser foot, or the edge of my center foot, to be towards the fold over there. Sorry, let me get my hands out of the way and zoom in a little bit. Okay, so I want the edge of my center foot to be up against that fold and not the edge of my presser foot over there. That's the side foot, okay? Got that good and straight. Start out with a back stitch. This is probably one of the harder seams on the bag just because you want to make sure that you keep it straight and that you don't sew it on there crooked. Not difficult to do, just you got to pay attention to a lot of different things and not just where your needle's going. Okay, so all the way across it, a back stitch, and there we go. Our gusset is now complete. Now, time to start clipping the gusset to the bag. I've got to grab a couple of things, one being my clips, but also my my ruler, because I'm going to measure my centers and stuff and line up all my centers. So I'll be right back with all those items. Alright, I'm going to zoom out a little bit here so we can make sure I'm working on camera. So I'm going to take and put those two side seams together and pinch this thing down so that I can mark my centers on this. And I had a pen in my hand. What did I do with it? There it is. So just marking the centers of the top and the bottom all the way across. Okay, just a couple little lines there to show me where those are. Alright, so there's one side. Now I'll do the other side. And then I'm going to do the exact same thing on my front and my back, except I will use a ruler because they're going to be very difficult to fold. So I've got my centering ruler here. I usually use a Sharpie for this, but I don't have one in my hand. I do have one of these. Okay, and I'm going to do this to both the front and the back, marking the centers and everything, and it's going to help me when I go to clip it all together. Okay, now when I sew it together, I'm going to sew the front on it first, because these right here being inside the bag when I go to sew the back on make it a little bit more difficult. You just got more stuff to wrestle with, so why make it difficult on your first sewing part, I guess you could say. Why not put those in last, and then they don't have to be difficult to work with. Okay, so once again, marking all my centers. All right, I'm going to change out the feet on my sewing machine to my presser feet, or my welting feet, my piping feet, if you will, and then we're going to start sewing this bad boy together. Be right back. All right, changed out my presser feet, got my big old bucket of clips here. Grab a handful of them because my giant coffee can doesn't need to stay on the desk all day. Alright, and now I'm just going to clip this bad boy together, and I'm going to start out in the centers. Now as far as this piece goes, it doesn't matter which part is front or back because it is ambidextrous. But I'm going to start out by clipping my centers and then working my way around, and then I can stitch. So there's the front center, or bottom center. And then we'll get it in the light so I can see the top center here. Okay, now I just clip everything all the way around it, making sure everything lines up. And I start out with the centers just to make sure that things aren't crooked once I get back to the beginning, or that I have a giant bubble because maybe the gusset's a little bigger, or maybe the panel piece is a little bit bigger, you know. It all depends on how, you know, your seam allowances and things like that. I do a 1/2 inch seam allowance on almost everything I do. Anyway, but this looks like it's going to measure up pretty well. And so yeah, here we go. So we're just clipping it along, putting it all together. And the good news is, if you're making this out of that thinner leather we talked about earlier in the video, it's very easy to manipulate if you need to scrunch some of it up or even stretch some of it a little bit to make sure everything fits just right. But I make sure that I've clipped all the way around it before I even make any of those type adjustments, because maybe I mismeasured a center or something like that, you know. But as long as the centers are accurate, I try to treat each side of the bag individually. I don't look at the entire project. I look at the left side of the center and the right side of the center, and I work areas into its own side. Received a phone call earlier this morning, and some terrible news that Shep Herman passed away yesterday. He is owner of the Herman Oak Tannery, and I believe he's 4th generation owner, maybe. Anyway, he's a very strong leader in the industry, a very great man, and he will be missed. All right, so here I've got a little bit of bubble. Not much, just a tiny bit. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to work that down towards this other corner here, and I think I can make it work out pretty well. And this is why bags like this, besides the idea that turn bags shouldn't be made of rigid leathers, this is why bags like this, being made of softer leathers, are so convenient, because they're so easy to manipulate to fix little issues like that. Okay, so I just pushed a little bit of that bubble down there, and now everything's great. Okay, now I'm going to start sewing this thing together, and it's not going to take me but a few seconds. Check that bobbin one more time here. Should have enough bobbin for the last 2 sew lines, which is the top and the bottom, or the front and the back here. Okay. All right. Now, I am using a welting foot so that I can get in real nice and tight and close to my piping. Okay. It's called a piping foot. It's called a welting foot. Anyway, I'm using one. It's a 1/4 inch is the size of the foot. Let me zoom in for you. Now, how the welting foot works is between the center foot and the presser foot is a little bit of a tunnel, like a train tunnel. Imagine that. And that train tunnel basically just straddles that piping, and it just perfectly places the needle tightly up against the piping as you go around. Now, the corner radiuses make it a little bit difficult, but as you've done a couple of projects with it, it really kind of falls into place just like it ought to. Piping is really easy if you have what you need to do it. I highly recommend getting one of these feet for your sewing machine. If you're not using a sewing machine, then hey, no big deal. Just take all your whatever you're using to punch your holes and put it right up against the core of that piping and punch your holes, and you'll be fine. All right, so here we are. We're already coming up to our first corner. I'm just going to remove clips as I come to them. And my big thing is I don't want to accidentally sew any kind of a fold or a bubble into this seam, because when I turn the bag right side out, I will definitely see that. Okay? And again, the softer and floppier the leather is, the easier it is to manipulate that out of it. The harder the leather is, the more firm it is. It does get a little bit more difficult to fix those areas. Okay? So, here we go. I'm just sewing all the way around this thing. Nothing crazy about it. It gets a little bit thick right here where the that transition is from the top to the bottom of the gusset, but it's still not a difficult thing to run right over. It will be a little bit more difficult on the back side when I have the wings on the sides of it that are holding the straps. That'll complicate things just a tiny bit. Not enough to really worry about, just enough to notice. Okay. And then the other thing is this zipper makes it to where it's a little bit less flexible. Get my hand out of your way. It makes it to where it's a little bit less flexible to manipulate up here on the top 2 corners. But again, it's not enough to worry about. You just calmly fold it down in one area, sew a little bit, fold it down in another area, and just make sure that you're not sewing any folds into what you're doing. I'm going to see if I can't bring this camera to the other side. I'm going to pause. All right, you are now on my right side when you were on my left side, and I'm hoping that maybe that'll help you see what I'm doing here, because I know my hand and everything was in the way before. So here I am. Again, I'm just taking her one stitch at a time around these corners. Okay, and I'm also making sure these clips like to get stuck into the areas of my sewing machine, stuff like that, you know, like where the machine meets the table and stuff. So I'm just trying to keep everything clear and moving as I go along. Okay, right here I've got a fold that wants to get under there. I'm going to try to work it out a little bit. So I've got to get my hands in the way to pull and stretch that. There we go. There we go. Okay, made it around that corner safely, somehow. All right, now we're going across the top. And again, just one stitch at a time. Take your time on it. It's not a huge bag. It's not going to take very long. Unless you're hand sewing, it will take a little longer. Sorry. Sometimes I wait too long to pull a clip out because it's already kind of up under the presser foot of the machine. All right. All right. Back to the other top corner, which is one of the hard ones. Again, I'm going to lift my presser foot and work some material around so that I can avoid sewing a bubble into it somewhere or a crease. There we go. All right, now that I'm over here on a straightaway, I can kind of work on this little area is bunched up on me here, and I can kind of spread that out throughout the entire side and get it moved. All right. Back on a straightaway so we can sew a little bit quicker here. All right, now we're back at the bottom corner, and the bottom corners are way easier because you don't have a zipper in the way. Okay, and now we're back on that bottom straightaway. We're just going to sew straight across that seam, that splice that we had made in our piping, and sew all the way across and rejoin our first stitches here and sew over them, and that'll do our complete our stitch. There we go. So I did about 4 extra stitches there. I do like to do a big overstitch on bags just to make sure that everything's nice and held in. Okay, now I'm going to zoom the camera out a little bit. We'll turn this thing right side out. We'll examine how we did, and I'll be just as surprised as you with however good or bad the results may be. All right, so here we are. We'll turn this thing right side out and see how we did. I would say we did just fine. Okay, so there's what the front's going to look like when it's done, and if you ask me, it's pretty all right. So what we're going to do now is we're going to flip it back inside out again, and we're going to clip the back end to it, and we're going to do that same stitch line one more again. Okay, so there's nothing to it. When I do this again, I want to make sure that the top of my pocket is pointing up in the bag. It's pointing towards the top of the zipper. Okay. And then I'll just drop those straps and stuff down inside the bag. And then I also want to unzip the bag just a little bit so I can get a finger in there to fully unzip it later. Okay, and then other than that, I'm going to take, once again, I'll just clip my centers together and then work my way around with clips. And when I come back, we'll sew that second side on. All right, so I've got my backside clipped on now. But this is when I want to talk real quick about, I kind of look at it and I judge the top of the front and the top of the back to make sure that they're parallel to each other, okay? If the backside is twisted a little bit or askew a little bit, then those lines won't be parallel. And I check all four sides of it just to make sure that it looks very even, okay? And if it's not even, then you need to take the time to unclip it and clip it back together the right way, or more straight, I should say, because you won't be happy with it if it's crooked. Once you turn it right side out, you'll definitely see it. You know, you may sell that to somebody and they may never ever see it, but you will, and you're a better person than that. I know this. You want it to be as good as it can be, okay? That's what we're doing here. We're working to improve, working to do better, right? So here we go. I'm gonna lose my presser foot if I don't put it in my drawer here. There you go. All right, so once again, I'm gonna start out in the bottom center, okay? And it is a little bit more difficult, like I said, to sew this bottom side on, just because now the bag has those straps in it, so it can be a little bit more difficult to manipulate under the machine. But if you take your time, go slow, it'll be okay. Okay, and I'm always making sure that my piping is in my little tunnel of my piping foot, because that's what's going to make a really nice seam when I turn that bag right side out again. Okay. Coming up to a corner here, so we'll go real slow coming into that corner. And then make sure I don't have any folds and wrinkles under my sewing. Okay. This is one of those where your hands and the machine have to work together really well. And you have to know where that needle is at all times. Janie throws a fit when she sees me putting my hand so close to the working part of the machine, but you know, you got to get in there. So far, I have not had a problem, but let's knock on wood on that, right? Let me zoom in a little bit for you, sorry. Okay, and I'm going to try to keep my hand out of your way, but I doubt I'm going to be successful at that because I need my hand in the way. All right, now here I am over one of the wings of this thing, and I just kind of have to, you can't really feel the piping too well, so it can, you almost have to guess where it's going to be. And I mean, if it's consistently in the same place all the way around, then you can easily see how much overlap you have outside of your presser feet and stuff. Now what I'm going to do is I'm coming up on this side, I'm unzipping this a little bit with my thumbnail, okay? And I'm going to pull that strap out. And that's going to make life so much easier as I stitch around the bag, okay? But you also want to make sure that that little zipper tab in there doesn't get up under your stitching also, or you will have a bad day, okay? It will damage your sewing machine. At a minimum, you'll break a needle, and at a maximum, well, all kinds of stuff. Knock it out of time, bend a needle bar. I mean, just unthinkable things. Okay, so as we get around this corner here, I'm going to unzip the other side a little bit too. And again, I'm going to move that strap completely out of my way as much as I can. Okay, so I'm just going to take it out the other side of the bag for a moment. And keep on a-stitching. Kind of manipulate everything how I need it. This part where the zipper's so close to the skived edge and the corner and everything, on the larger one we don't have as much of that problem, but on the smaller bag that is the difficult thing. That's what makes the smaller bag a little bit more difficult to build than the large one. It's kind of like the sling bags we talked about in the beginning of this video, where the 75% one is more difficult to build than the full size one, just because you're working in tinier details. But every detail matters to us, so it doesn't matter how big of a detail they are, right? Okay. There we go. Get that zipper to stand up for me. Okay, and as I come up to the second corner over here, I'll go ahead and take this strap and just put it back on the other side of the bag so it's out of my way once again. Okay, almost to the other corner of the top. I try not to take these clips off until I absolutely have to on these top corners. But this one's actually laying out really well. Almost makes me wonder what's going to go wrong somewhere else. Y'all know what I'm talking about. Okay, now I'm back to the other side. Once again, I'm sewing over where that wing is covering the piping, so I just kind of have to know where my piping is under there because it's a little bit more difficult to feel. The good news is the piping is behind the wing, so when I turn the bag right side out, you won't even see the piping because it's behind the wing. So if you got it a little bit loose or a little bit tight, nobody will know but you or someone else that examines the bag. All right, let's keep going here. We are so close down into this last corner. Oop. We got a little bit of a fray on our thread, but it's not enough to worry about. Looks like it's going to get sucked down into the bag just fine, so no big deal. I probably torqued on the needle a little bit and made the shuttle hook nick that thread just a tiny bit. But if it's not really separating and coming up into the machine itself, then I don't really worry about it. I'll just keep sewing, and it'll get sucked right down into the seam, and none the wiser. There we go. Back to the home stretch here. Overlap our stitches a little bit, and we are done as far as actually putting the bag together. I say that because we can put a binding on the edge, and it'll really clean it up and make it so much prettier. Okay, and we are going to do that. I will show you how to do that on one side, and then you can imagine that I've done it on the other side. But putting a binding on the edge covers up all these seams and also the raw edge of our leather, okay? So I'm going to pause the camera, grab my binding material right quick, and then I'll have to change my presser feet, and then we'll get that going. All right, so as I said, we're going to do a binding on these edges just to clean them up, make them look better. And first thing I need to do is, you can see some areas where all the layers aren't quite squared up with each other, and it'll make this process a lot easier if I go ahead and trim those so that they're all kind of flat across. There's not too many areas like that, just a couple here and there. In previous videos, when we did the binding, we used it was called bias tape, and I got it from like fabric stores and stuff like that. And it already has a fold in it, and yeah, and you wrap that fold around your edge and sew it in. But I recently experimented with just a piece of ribbon. I made a bag a couple of days ago, and I didn't have bias tape, and so I had this 7/8 of an inch wide ribbon, and I just folded it over my edge myself and sewed it on. And honestly, it seemed to work even a little bit easier than the stuff that was already pre-folded for me. So so we're going to try it again and see if we get lucky again. When I say get lucky, it might have been luck the first time that it worked out so well. Again, though, too, also that was a large project, and again, you know, smaller projects can be difficult because they're smaller. So anyway, but what I'm going to do is take this ribbon and just wrap it around here, okay, and this is almost like that basting stitch, like it's just going to be out on the outside edge. I am not trying to stitch inside of any of those other stitch lines, okay? I just want to stick this thing on here, make it all pretty, okay? So here we go. Again, I'm just wrapping it around, and I'll sew a few inches, few stitches, few whatever I can get to, and then I'll wrap a little bit more of it and do it all again. Okay? Just like this. All right, and of course, just like anything else, you get to the corners, it can get a little bit tricky, but it's not going to be that big a deal. So I did go back to a darker thread color. I don't know if I mentioned that, but now I have brown thread when before I had the natural. Just since this and the liner are dark, I figured, you know, it wouldn't help hide any ugly stitches or anything, or ugly seams if I put a light colored thread on this. So, yeah. So anyway, I'm going to do this on both the front and the back side here. And when we come back, it'll be done. There's no secret to it, but I'm just gonna walk all the way around the edge of this thing, sewing this on, and there's no reason to make this video any longer than it already probably is. And yeah, when I come back, we will discuss what we're gonna do with our straps and turn it right side out and all that fun. So here we go. All right, so I got my binding sewn on, and the edges are much prettier this way. However, in hindsight, I probably should have used a darker thread when I sewed in all the piping stuff and the basting stitches and all that. Since I was using a dark liner and a dark binding, if I'd have used a dark thread as well, that probably would have worked out a little bit better, but that's how every project works, isn't it? Now we know. So, time to turn this bad boy right side out. Bring the camera down a little bit. So, I try not to stress the zippers too much, so I'm going to go ahead and be very careful with them and go ahead and turn those areas. Since this thing has such a wide mouth on it, it's not very difficult to turn. Just got to work on my corners and all that stuff. Just kind of mold them how you want them. There we go. And we zip her up. Ain't it cool? All right, guys, so the only thing we have left to do is to figure out our shoulder strap, okay? So I'm gonna leave mine at full length here. I implore you to go ahead and put the buckle on it, put the slide on it, and then if you need to trim it afterwards, then that's fine. But you've only got one shot at this, and if you trim it too short, then you'll be unstitching, putting a new one in, and then restitching, and who wants to go through all that when they could just wait? All right, I'm gonna bring the camera down here. So this is the back of it. Okay, and I've got the shoulder strap where it's straight. There's no twists in it. And I'm gonna put my my slide on first, okay? And I'm going to take it just up through the slide, down through the slide. And then I'm gonna move the slide way back here down the strap, okay? Now it's buckle time. So the buckle is meant to be adjustable. So what I'm gonna do is, it's got that little roller thingy in there. I'm gonna put it in front of the roller thing and then pull it back down behind the roller thing. There we go. And then I take it back here to the slide and I'm gonna loop it in to the slide. Now, this is one method of doing it. The other method of doing it would be that you sewed the slide on. 6 in one hand, half a dozen the other. If you just leave just the slightest little bit outside the slide here, then you don't have to worry about, it's not like you'll have a big floppy whatever there, okay? But now once we've got that, buckle this, make sure it's just as awesome as it's supposed to be. Zoom the camera out a little bit. There is no more zoom out of the camera. I'll step back. All right, and then we put it on right over that microphone where it makes lots of noise. Now I need to loosen this one because I'm a big dude and I just made it small. So anyway, but here we are, guys. We are all finished. Congratulations. I hope you're happy with it. I am going to put some little blood knots on the zipper pulls just so that they are easy to grab and zip. But this has been a great project. Okay, so once again, we've got this front pocket, and then separately we've got the hole inside that is, you know, separated from the front pocket, and then we've got a little inside pocket as well. I hope you're proud of yours. I'm definitely proud of this one. It's the 6th or 7th one I've made now. You know, the first several were just pattern development. But anyway, so until next time, guys, I'm Aaron Heiser of Maker's Leather Supply, and I hope you have a great day.